dynasty, second half of the 14th century. Okay, I hear it. That's good. All right, Ming. The Ming dynasty, you remember? 1368 to 1644. And the Ming dynasty was really the first time after the Han dynasty that China had its, the Yuans had been there and the Mongols and all that. Now they were under their own rulers again, and they were doing well. And climate helped them do well. I mean, it had never been warmer in China. They were growing wheat in the Yellow River area in the north and rice in the Yangtze and double rice crops down there in the Pearl Valley area. It was magnificent. 100 million people in China, biggest country in the world. And the Chinese were way ahead of Europe in many technological areas. Among them, navigation. They were sending fleets onto the Indian and Pacific Oceans that made European fishing boats look like the work of amateurs. 5 masts, 5 decks. One fleet went out with 20,000 soldiers and technicians on board, capable of staying at sea for 3 weeks, able to grow their own food on special farms they had laid out on the decks. Incredible. And they had reached, I hope I live long enough to get the rest of this story, because they reached East Africa, where they intermarried with some of the local population. They also went through the Bab el-Mandab in the Red Sea and up to Jeddah. And can you imagine what it must have been? Islam was just in its most virulent form there. Here comes this Chinese fleet and docks offshore. What must the Muslims have thought of this apparition in the Red Sea? And what must the Chinese have thought of what was going on in Mecca and Jeddah? All we know is they were there. We do not have any, as you know, book writing was not a great thing in the Arab world. We just don't have a heck of a lot of information. And what there is in China, and it's just now becoming a part of research. But in any case, it's suddenly, the roof falls in on China the way it did on Europe. A little later in the century, but the same little ice age. The Chinese were just about to round the African Cape and come up the Atlantic to Europe. And if they had reached Europe, divided, disorganized, disease-ridden, the Chinese would have taken Europe over and we'd all be speaking Chinese today. But something happened that stopped it, and that was this. When the little ice age hit China, as it will hit again in Canada and in Scandinavia and in Russia and China once again, the emperor said no more adventurism, no more fleets to distant lands. We're going to build barges, we're going to extend the Grand Canal, and we're going to send those barges full of rice to grain-poor northern China, because if we don't, we'll have a revolution. It'll be the end of the Chinese state. So we ordered the ships burned and focused on survival. Well, you know how historians put this in their textbooks. You go home and take a look at any textbook, and it'll say the Ming emperors turned isolationist, and therefore stopped doing what they were doing, and no environmental or other reason given. Now look, ladies and gentlemen, we all know human nature. Do you think these Chinese emperors sat in a room together and said, let's all be isolationists now? Obviously not. They were impelled to stop what was going to be the great national adventure. And so climate, once again, had an enormous impact on history, and therefore you can't really study history without environmental background.